what I chose to do for this discussion is to try and put suburbanisms or suburbias or whatever they are, society and space, into the context of something wider. And of course, we could start by going to China, we could go to India, we could go to Brazil. And his analysis is not hinged on this, but so Zandspruit may be a little bit more like, becoming something more like a favela. Well, I don't know what I think about that proposition, but let's go look at what is going on in cities in other parts of the world. Here is the classic Rio. Look, there's Cristo Redentor looking down from Corcovado. And if we go out to more the east side of Sao Paulo, here is this is the picture taken from a different angle that UN Habitat made famous by putting Morumbi and Paraisópolis. This is the favela which is called Paradise. Right next to each other. You've all seen various views of that juxtaposition. And again, there's a built environment difference. Not only is the favela, in the old-fashioned language that Tanya once knew well, consolidated in a physical sense, whether that means it is in a social sense is a different question, much more than a place like Zandspruit. Of course, in Africa, this question intersects with and is complicated by a very persistent phenomenon in Southern Africa, probably more persistent in Southern Africa. It's not that there's no circular migration within the state of New Jersey. Of course there is. But walk out on the street here, folks, and check out how many people do not have connections in some other place, sometimes across the international frontiers of South Africa, which are accidental phenomena after all, very often right inside those international frontiers. So let's just remember that in the background, including people who may have the wherewithal to try to insert themselves into the Roodepoort suburbs, there may be a lot of other connections, there may be a lot of other calls on what people have to do. And my guess would be, if we went to some of these new apartment and other kinds of complexes on the periphery of Tunisia and started asking people, hello, who are you, who you're related to, what's your insertion into the economy, what do you think of the global stuff, etc., that some of the answers would not be so different from what you guys are finding in the suburbs of Roodepoort. So in Dar es Salaam, here's some of the older public housing units. These ones are actually inspired by the East German regime as opposed to the ex-British colonial regime in the previous ones. What's happening in those kinds of zones? And is what is happening in those kinds of zones at all similar to what is happening in Tsakane or Soweto? Where do people go when they have the opportunity to remove themselves from those zones of public housing? If there is a 21st century phenomenon of rapidly increasing foreign investment, as there is in the majority, but not all, African cities. Kinshasa is an interesting social change in African cities. Of course, there's a massive pile of economic growth taking place in Africa. I don't mean that Africa is the next China. I will leave that to others to go talk about somewhere else, but that's not the same as saying, yes, most African cities are experiencing high rates of economic growth, maybe off a very low base, not in all cases. Therefore, to put it very bluntly, as my colleague Robin Bloch, with whom I'm working closely on this project, says, therefore, rapidly expanding both middle and excluded classes. That's interesting. Does that sound like favela next to high-rise apartment? I'm not sure. But in that context, there's of course a close set of relationships between social change and change in the urban landscapes.